Hi, Suzanne. Such an honor to be here, really. Thank you for asking me. Uh, yeah, when did I do the Gateless training? I graduated in 2016, and I had a lot of help getting there, which I'm so grateful for. I had friends who made pies, cherry pies, and I raised money by selling cherry pies. And a lot of my writing students paid for my way to Gateless. Like I had $1,000 pie, $1,000 cherry pie that I sold, among others, to get to the training. And I think it was obviously meant to be because actually it was really easy to sell the pies. I was really blown away by how easy it was, how it flowed. So that's the story of the pies. So yeah, that's how I got to Gateless. And why was I drawn to the Gateless teacher training? Wow. Um, Actually, one of the students who bought a pie um, told me that I was pretty much doing Gateless and that I should meet you and I would love it. And to do the training would just add so much and also add a community to, my already wonderful community, but to be able to meet other Gateless teachers and to have that support right now it's been incredible. And I also think that I was already doing my own thing, and Gateless just allowed me again to do it in an even more concise, articulated way. Like it gave me so much more structure to work in, and it allowed me to know why Gateless works, why what I was doing was working, because of the brain science. There's a reason why we do Gateless, and there was a reason I was teaching in the way I was teaching, and now I know more about that, which is invaluable. It's incredible. So yeah, I was drawn to it because I started investigating education when I was a kid, because when I was in public schools, not to knock public schools, I love them, but I was really looking around me going, this is not working. This method of teaching is not working. I wanted to know why. So I started reading, when I was in high school, I started reading Jonathan Kozol, John Dewey, A.S. Neal, Summerhill. And then when I got a little older, I met Paulo Freire, the great Brazilian educator. He was so foundational for what I do. He, Paulo Freire, he was in the literacy movement in Brazil, and he taught a lot of impoverished people how to read. But his basic thing was, you already know everything you need to know. Your experience tells you what you need. Your experience is enough. You are enough. Like that was Paulo's thing. And he had this thing called banking education where he said people are not banks to be deposited in. That education is not to be deposited in people. It's to actually be drawn out, and what they already know is just to be drawn out. So to me, that put everything in perspective, and I actually think that's the way people best learn. So I think that's part of Gateless for me too. Um, so let's see, my business before and after the training. So my business started with me because we are our own best and worst enemies. And I've always been a writer, but it felt like the most vulnerable thing for me to do in the world, especially to share my writing. But I also had a lot of blocks because I thought I should be writing in a certain way, like this person or that person, or I should sound good or whatever. And at one point, I started taking writing classes, and I would leave crying. I would leave in tears. I would shake during class. And I was thinking, wow, I just don't feel safe here, and I think safety is essential if in a learning environment. And that's the opposite of what we've had. The cult of criticism, we have had the opposite of what we really need as learners. So when I started reteaching myself, like unlearning everything I know, I started being able to write the way I wanted to write. And I wound up in this like little group class in a cafe in Seattle. And the teacher was like 80 years old, and she was a former English teacher. And she wrote like weird noir stories with like sexual noir. And she was just like, she didn't care. She was like, I'm just going to write and do it. And most of the other people in the Monday night group were just off the street, like there were like other elderly 70, 80-year-old people in the class. And then there were people with mental illness that would walk in off the street. It was just this motley crew. I call it the motley crew. And like, what a great learning environment to have a motley crew where there are no expectations and, there was no criticism. All we did was she gave us these crazy, crazy prompts, and we would write and read to each other. And there would be really no feedback except, oh, yay, that was great. And I learned something in that class about letting go of my ego and letting go of caring and letting go of, the strain and the stress, the seriousness of being a writer. And suddenly, like, I felt the top of my head open. That's why I call it like my top of my head opening experience. And so my business, long story short, is called Writing from the Top of Your Head. And when that opened in me, where I I was not blocking myself anymore, all these images and stories and words and feelings came in that I'd really been blocking and thinking, well, that's not going to be part of this story. Or in fact, those things were knocking on the door of the story I was writing. They just wanted to be let in. It's our subconscious. It's our beautiful material that we all have. And so when I started writing from that place, it was a whole different animal. So I later read a quote from Emily Dickinson, and she said, "It should feel like the top of your head is open. That is poetry." And I was like, actually, she said, "It should feel like the top of your head is off. That is poetry." I was like, whoa, Emily, you are really avant-garde. Like, that's quite a thing to say. And that's part of the reason I call my business Writing from the Top of Your Head too, because of Emily, like what she had to say. I love that. So anyways, I became so empowered after that class. This book poured out of me. I published it. It won an award, blah, blah, blah. But the whole journey that got me there made me realize that I wanted to become a creativity coach too, and that I wanted to teach and pass along this process to other people. But I knew that the other half of my process had to be supported with becoming a creativity coach, because I wanted to learn like brass tack tools that I could give my students. And indeed I did. The Kaizen Muse training was amazing. There is a tool for every obstacle. And now I call the prompts that I do, I call them medicine prompts, because I feel like each prompt is kind of a medicine that's geared towards a certain wound, a certain pain. And, do this prompt and it will help you with that wound. And so, yeah, I combined coaching with the process, the Writing from the Top of Your Head process, and I just wung it. I was a terrified teacher too. I was so scared. But this group of 8 students in Asheville, where I lived, they came to me, and I said, let's try this. Let's figure it out. So they stayed with me for like 8 rounds of 6 week courses. and they helped me devise the course. And it was like peer to peer. It was like everybody had a voice in how we learned. And I learned so much from them. So that's how writing from the top of your head came about. And it has now become an 8-week self-study course online, so people can take it from all over the world. I also teach live. I'm working on starting to do retreats with a yoga teacher friend. Um, and it's also, well, I do offer one-to-one coaching, but I also have a course coming up called SOAR, SOAR, not sore like wound. And it's an 8-week intensive workshop with a small group of students, and they'll get the 8-week writing from the top of your head course online, and then we'll do gateless reading, sharing online, and we'll do group coaching. It's going to be really intimate and really um, just, I don't know, something happens when people work together that's greater than working one-to-one, I think. As we all know with Gateless, that power of the group is so strong. So yeah, that's coming up in July, but I'll be running those like periodically throughout the year for 2 months at a time. So yeah, after the Gateless training, my business, I did it in 2016, but my business really, I feel like I could hold this space for students in a way that was so much more powerful because of the way Gateless works. And the students took to it like, ducklings. They just were like, this makes sense. And I think the whole thing about Gateless and creating safety, it's so built into the Gateless process that people feel even more safe. And so it's just added so much to the group process, and I've made it my own. I think that's the beauty of Gateless, is that I can still be myself, do what I do, and use those beautiful methods with my students, with myself. And I often tell the story of like Gateless is, it's like writing with your best friends around you instead of the people that criticize you all the time. Like, think about how you feel when you're around your best friends. Like, I feel my most creative around my best friends. Like, I can just say anything and be goofy and be loud and not care, and they're going to love me anyways. And I think that it's not about they're going to love everything I do, that's great, but it's really about creating the atmosphere where people can show up as they are. So when you're being criticized, you can't show up as you are. Like, I know how that feels. We all know how that feels. It feels like shit. It's awful. And that's often how education has felt to me. Like, when am I going to get shot down? And, this is so much about building up your strengths and seeing the inner genius in each other. And like, to be able to give that to each other as writers, like, I want to support you as a writer as much as I love your support. Like, let's help everyone be the incredible genius writer that they can be. So there's so much unused potential in people. That's what I really feel like. If we created an environment that's gateless and that's open, we would have so many more innovators. We would have a different world because everyone could show up. There would be a need for every single person to show up as they are. That's part of what I do. It's to really help people be who they are. So, yeah. So let's see. I'll just give an example of a student and how I've seen them grow in my classes. I had a student she's now in her 80s, but she came to me as a failed writer. She feels like she just quit writing, but she was invited to go to Iowa when she was younger. She was going to become a writer, and some things got in the way, but also she just sort of fell victim to a lot of critique, and she quit. and left that whole part of herself behind, which is like leaving, your creativity behind is kind of like a death for a lot of people. So she kind of crawled back into my classes and rediscovered that, yeah, she's a writer. And she said to me, I feel like I'm valuable now. I feel like my life has value. And when I can like help people find that part of their life that is most alive, when I can help people find their wild imagination again, um, when I see people come who have left the art world for various reasons. I have so many students who've quit MFA programs, who've, taken one writing class, and they just felt like they had nothing. When I see them find that spark, when I see that spark in their eyes, it's like, to me, that's just as fulfilling as writing a story that I love, or, being a teacher is such a creative process. So, and I don't feel like I'm the expert. I feel like I bow to my students. They're teaching me as much as I'm, facilitating for them. So, um, let's see. Memoir, story about the top of your head. Memoir. Oh, I don't know what you meant by that, Suzanne. I can't remember. Tell me how you feel about working with students. Yeah, that's the joy. Memoir. Yeah, I guess I covered that. They access their imagination. Um, uh, yeah, the toddler thing. Anyways, um, yeah, my processes are definitely geared toward helping people find and accept their own inner material that they've been pushing away. And yeah, I was going to say, like, the analogy with Gateless too is that, you want to create an environment where it's really fantastic to fail and to actually be as bad as you want to be. Like, oh, let's go for it. Let's like really be bad. Let's really do all the things we're not supposed to do. Let's be a hooligan. Let's break the rules. Like, to me, when you leave your inner adolescent out of your work, you're there's like not going to be the juice that I think the world needs right now. The world needs a lot of hooligans. Like, we need to cause some trouble. And when I see my students finding that in themselves, it's so fulfilling, and the work gets so much more creative and out of the boundaries of what we all put on what is supposed to be art or writing. And so, anyways, like, I want to create an atmosphere where people can fall down and feel like, oh, that falling is actually where the material is. And yeah, the analogy is you wouldn't say to a child who is learning to walk, when they fell, you wouldn't say, ugh, I can't believe you fell again. Like, you'd be like, yeah, you fell. That means you're learning. That means you're growing. Like, that whole process of learning, we cut that process of learning to be like A to Z. You're supposed to be good. You're supposed to be great. And we leave out like all the gems that can come from being bad at something, or quote unquote bad. There is no bad, but really opening up to the process instead of the product, experimenting, becoming like Einstein, like, oh, what am I gonna, I hopefully will not blow up the building today, like with your chemistry set. But what if you do? Like, how cool is that? Um, anyways, Suzanne, I've been chatting and talking for so long, and you're going to really have to cut this. So that was like a half an hour, maybe. Feels like I was talking longer. Um, anything else? Ah, I love Gateless. I don't know, man. It's just like, I feel like, yes, it is part of Gateless is taking who you are and being gateless with it. And you don't have to, like, it's not like a method where you have to be a certain way. It's so much bigger. It's like, I think Suzanne says it's synergistic. And I really believe that. I've felt that ever since I took the training. I feel like this synergy has happened, this sort of magic around my own creative process and also around my business. So yeah, my teaching's just changed in that way. But yeah, anyone can bring the process to what they do in a way that it's so adaptable. It's beautiful. I love it. So everyone should go out and sell pies and eat them and then go to Gateless. Suzanne is so awesome. But yeah, I could keep talking and I'm not going to. Oh my God. All right, let's make sure I recorded this. And Suzanne, you let me know if this is not good enough. We'll just like get on the phone again for 10 minutes. So, okay. Bye. I love you. I'm going to stop.